Ruth.
Hey y'all, good afternoon. It has been a while since I've done one of these, and just what in the world is the Bible talking about? And the reason I do this, for me personally, has been I've learned so much just asking this question. And over 20 years of teaching the Bible, have noticed that everyone comes to the Bible with their own preconceived ideas about what it says, and then they kind of come to the Bible and ask the wrong questions, like, what does it mean to me? And honestly, it doesn't really matter what it means to you. The Bible is a form of communication where one person is talking to a group of people or another person, and the idea is, what is this person trying to communicate? And the idea of the Bible is the one really trying to communicate is the Spirit of God, trying to communicate to people. He does that through people. And so you don't ask the question of what does it mean to me? The question is, what is it actually saying? What are we talking about? So, and I've noticed, whether you're Baptist or Methodist or Catholic or Presbyterian, it doesn't really matter, because everyone does this. We all do this. And we'll do this until we recognize that we do it and accept that we do it, and then change our thinking about this. And then at that point, maybe you actually want to learn the Bible, and that'd be up to you. So this is stuff that I've learned, and hopefully it helps. It's helped me. But what in the world is the Bible talking about? This is the Ruth edition. So Ruth is a little book of the Bible, 4 chapters. Fits into the book of Judges, probably early on in the book of Judges, but it's like a bright spot in this terrible history of Israel, where there's oppression, there's salvation, and there's oppression, and there's salvation, and oppression, and deliverance, and oppression, and just this cycle of back and forth. Like there's 12 cycles, there's civil war in Israel, and so Judges is just this terrible history of the Jews in the land, and either fighting themselves or abandoning the God that saved them. And that's sort of the storyline. Ruth fits in. Ruth is a bright spot, and for some reasons maybe that aren't important to you or me, but they are important to what's being said. Ruth is a Moabite. That's important. She's not an Israelite, and really with the belief that only God deals with Israelites and only Israelites are God's children. At that point in time, the fact that a Moabite is much more virtuous and a better person than Israelites, and particularly, Israelite men or women, and the fact that this Moabite lady is a better person, a more virtuous person than any Israelite man or woman is interesting. Boaz is a good man, though. He's an Israelite, and he's a good man. He is actually kind of a half Israelite, because his mother is Rahab, who is the harlot from Joshua, and I think she's an Amorite. So even Boaz is kind of a mix. But so the story of Ruth is pretty simple. It's 4 chapters. It's like this fairy tale story. It's great. It ends up with Ruth, who is a Moabite, and Boaz getting married. And I'm spoiling it here, but just get right to the end of it. They get married and become one of King David's great-grandparents. And so how do we get to that point? Well, there's a family that moves out of Israel, out of the Promised Land, into Moab. The husband dies and the 2 sons die. Who's left is Naomi, the mother-in-law, and then the 2 daughter-in-laws. Naomi wants to return to Bethlehem, so she does, and one of the 2 daughter-in-laws decides she's going to abandon her own life and just take care of Naomi and give her life to Naomi. And so she does that. Her name is Ruth. And so in this selfless act of sacrifice and essentially adopting a new life and saying, I'm going to die where you die, I'm going to live where you live, I'm going to go where you go, all of those things, your God's going to be my God. Ruth says all these things. And in doing so and taking care of Naomi, chapter 2, she finds a man named Boaz because she's out gleaning these fields and just picking up what's left over from the harvest. And Boaz takes note of Ruth and takes note that she's a virtuous woman. She's a kind woman. She's sacrificial. She's taking care of her mother-in-law. And so Boaz says, who is this? And finds out it's Ruth. It's this Moabite lady, and she's a good woman and has some interest in her. And Naomi finds out that Boaz is actually she's kin to Boaz, and Boaz is kind of a distant cousin, but he has opportunity to redeem the land, because remember, all of Naomi's children are dead. So all the property is gonna, once Naomi dies, is gone. It just kind of goes out into, you know, nobody owns it anymore. Somebody will pick it up. But anyway, so Naomi doesn't have any children, finds out that Boaz is actually kin to her, and instructs Ruth that, hey, there may be an opportunity here. And through all this process, Boaz has already had his eye on Ruth. And so, you know, the story starts to take shape, and there's a relationship there between Boaz and Ruth. There's some interest, I should say. And Boaz ends up proposing and marrying Ruth, and they have children. And their children, they have a son named Obed. Obed has a son named Jesse, and Jesse is David's father. And so it's a great little 4 chapters. Like I said, kind of a diamond in the rough of what's going on in the nation of Israel at that time, but very instructive. Starts to hint at things like, not really hint at it, just explains the grace of God, how it's playing out in people's lives, in the lives of obedient people. And it's just a great, I don't say a great story, it's this history and this genealogy, but it's a great story. So I encourage you to read it and think about it. And yeah, Book of Ruth.